South Pacific Sleep Lab provides a personal study of your sleep patterns. With their trained specialists, they will diagnose your sleep habits and will give you a prognosis for getting a great relaxing night of sleep. South Pacific Sleep Lab has locations throughout Southern California, including Fontana, and will provide transportation to any of their locations at no cost to you. To find out more, give them a call at 844-SAD-5050. That's 844-SAD-5050. South Pacific Sleep Lab. Start resting easy and sleeping sound today.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
I'm Tom Busby, CNBC. Netflix is now fighting back at director Steven Spielberg after he reportedly campaigned to exclude Netflix and other streaming services from competing for Oscar awards in the future. Spielberg suggested that Netflix movies should compete for Emmys instead, calling its products TV movies. No prizes on Wall Street today. The Dow lost 206 points. The Nasdaq down 17. An early rally on optimism about U.S.-China trade talks fizzled out on worries about tariffs, also impacting the markets. Much weaker than expected construction spending in December. AT&T says it's restructuring its newly acquired Warner Media business. That could mean cost cuts and a number of layoffs at CNN, HBO, and other cable properties as it readies to do battle against streaming giants like Netflix, Amazon, Walt Disney, and others. And the FDA threatening Walgreens, Walmart, and several big gas station chains for selling cigarettes and vaping products to kids. Tom Busby, CNBC.
I used to have a sweet tooth. Had it removed when I was a kid. So what do I crave instead of chocolate? A big red box from Grainger. Grainger satisfies my craving for great customer service with 24/7 support, effortless ordering, and same-day pickup or next-day delivery options. No busy signals, no cavities. I love Grainger. You know why? Because when it comes to reliable product and technical support, Grainger's got your back. Call or click Grainger.com to see for yourself. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Call 800-319-8464. That's 800-319-8464. Again, 800-319-8464.
Many people in northern New Jersey are digging out from 6 to 9 inches of snow from an overnight storm. Scott Pringle has more.
Well, folks are pleasantly surprised they left for work seeing blacktop on streets and highways.
The main roads, for the most part, are good. They kept up with the cleaning, and they didn't drop the ball like they did, I think, last year.
But the snow, very heavy. Thousands woke up with their power out here in the Garden State, and clearing off the driveway, a tough task with giant boulders at the end.
The snow's real heavy shoveling, real heavy plowing.
Sal is a senior in high school, making some money shoveling.
We started at 4 o'clock this morning.
What's the plan today?
Finish, go home, and sleep, even if I do have school, because I'm pretty tired.
In Morris County, Scott Pringle, NBC News Radio, New Jersey.
SpaceX Crew Dragon has successfully docked with the International Space Station. NASA's Anne McClain and her 2 fellow space station crew members carried out a welcoming ceremony on Sunday.
Congratulations to all of the teams who made yesterday's launch and today's docking a success. These amazing feats show us not how easy our mission is, but how capable we are of doing hard things.
The only occupant of the Crew Dragon is a dummy named Ripley, but NASA plans to put real astronauts aboard the capsule in July. It will be the first time in about 8 years that astronauts will be sent to the space station from American soil. Since 2011, NASA's been outsourcing its ISS missions to Russia. New York Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer is hoping Amazon will change its mind and open its second headquarters in Queens. The high-tech giant walked away from a deal to build in Long Island City 2 weeks ago after pushback from some local lawmakers who weren't in favor of the tax breaks Amazon was set to get. Governor Andrew Cuomo says he reached out to Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos this past week, hoping to resurrect the deal. And at the box office, the computer-animated feature How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World is North America's top movie for the second straight week. The third film in the Universal trilogy took in $30 million in the U.S. and Canada. Lisa Carter, NBC News Radio.
It's time to make the Tri-City Center in Redlands a regular part of your weekly shopping experience. Tri-City is home to a wide assortment of quality businesses, including the all-new Ocean Aquatics. Check out their variety of exotic tropical fish, along with fish food, accessories, and tanks of all shapes and sizes. The Tri-City Center is located just off of Alabama and the Tennessee exits in Redlands. Visit the Tri-City Center today and find out why it's called the Mall with a Heart.
Erin here from On the Brink Morning Show, where we talk about all that is engaging in the Inland Empire. News, politics, business, family, things to do, and so much more. Join us weekdays from 6 to 7 a.m. on KCAA 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, and 1050 a.m. or on KCAAradio.com.
Talk 102.3 FM Riverside. Thank you, America, for making us radio's number one format for 8 years. Talk 102.3 FM Riverside. KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind.
And now, it's For the People with Judge Herb Dodell.
Okay, good afternoon. You know, in our never-ending search for something new, to do things different every week so that there's no boredom in going along with the shows, today I have a very interesting guest. One of the things that's going on right now, it's being attended to often in the press, is domestic violence and the Me Too movement, as well as what goes on in the family court. Family court's its own little unique fiefdom. The lawyers are all specialists. Most of them, they're certified. They have to take all these courses and whatever. So I shouldn't say I got, that's really not great grammar. I've been able to encourage a lawyer who specializes in family law and divorces to be our guest today. She's extremely well qualified. She practices in both the LA County and Ventura counties, and she's going to tell you that there's a difference in the counties, believe it or not. I didn't think there would be any difference. You know, the law is the law. And along the way, I had to be trained, and ultimately I was certified in family law. Not that I really cared ever to do it. I didn't want to do it. When I was practicing in the early years, I did some. Nothing that I really love. It's a horrible way to make a living.
Well, I mean,
I mean, you're in the middle of everybody's fights.
Yeah.
And it's all about emotional. Yeah. And they used to call me at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Everybody, he's taking the silverware, you know, that kind of. It wasn't something that I was interested in, but she loves this. Her name is Julie Stankowski, and she's going to be our guest at 4:30. Just as an illustration of what we had to learn. And the reason I had to be certified in family law was because the way the county was running it was domestic violence cases were handled in the family court. Restraining orders, which I was assigned to on a regular basis for almost 6 years, is under the civil law, and is just the same general court system, not differentiated as family law is. It was heard, among the normal regular calendars. So just to give you an illustration of the things we have to do, people like to know, well, how trained are the judges? What do you really have to know? You know, how
trained are you, Judge?
Well, I probably forgot more than I wanted to remember. But here, I'm going to show it to the camera. See this thing here? It says, Judge's Guide to Domestic Violence Cases. This whole thing is about an inch and a half, almost 2 inches.
Is that pre-OJ or post-OJ?
It's 2014, revised 2014.
Post-OJ.
But it also includes tribal communities. They have their own rules, believe it or not.
The tribes? The Indian tribes?
Yeah. And it also deals with guns, just as regular restraining orders does.
Mm-hmm.
It has a little unique provision.
Yes.
That's not in the general civil code, and that is for an emergency restraining order. We don't have that in 527.6 cases, which is the general restraining order code section. There, it's an ex parte application for a temporary restraining order, and it's handled a lot differently because the EPO, emergency protective orders, they're done in the field.
Yeah.
In fact, what happens, and I'm sure that Julie will tell you all about it, is you call it in, and there's a judge that issues it over the phone. I mean, it's like, it's instant. And even though There's no opportunity for anybody to respond because it's instant. The same restriction on gun control applies. Nothing has happened, but you got to turn over the guns. They do searches, they do all kinds of things. And in order to qualify under domestic violence as opposed to civil litigation over restraining orders, there are different rules. So we're going to talk about some of the rules today with Julie, and then we're going to get into some of the more interesting issues dealing with family law, which is child custody, child support,
alimony,
and spousal support. Alimony is a term that's used by a lot of people. It's really called spousal support.
Okay, well.
And that's one of those things that can change day to day.
Yeah.
In fact, many of the cases that are heard in family court are for modifications. You lost a job, you didn't get a job, the wife goes in, if it's the wife chasing the husband for more spousal support.
Well, when's the husband ever chasing the wife? Never.
Oh no, that's not
please.
so.
Not often.
No. You get situations. No, you get situations where
every now and then,
where a very rich woman marries a very poor guy. He gets used to the lifestyle or whatever, and they break up, and he wants spousal support.
Oh please.
And you know what? Believe it or not, truly. Husbands can get spousal support from their wives.
I know they can, but it's, how does the court really look upon that?
Well, you know what? One of the things I don't like about family court, and I didn't like family court to begin with, is that it's all a crapshoot. They look at the numbers. There's a chart on the wall. I forgot the name of the, what's the name of that chart that we use?
Screw the husband chart.
It's located next to the bail chart, and it has in it all of the ranges. If you're making X dollars,
nice.
You're making X dollars, you're going to pay X dollars worth of spousal support.
Oh, that's so great.
And spousal support is deductible from income taxes, and child support is not.
Right.
So there are big difference. Family court is a
as opposed to just not having any kids.
Turn off my phone.
Right.
What to do.
As opposed to not having any kids, because I remember when I got divorced, I had a lot of assets at the time, and I had a lot of my dad's assets at the time, and I didn't want any of those to be taken or have to fight over that with my ex-wife. So I just asked her. I said, "Give me a number, what you want."
$50,000.
You remembered, huh?
I do. You paid her $50,000, and you were sorry about it later.
No, I wasn't actually. I was not sorry about it at all. I was upset that I had to pay her $50,000. Yeah, I mean, it's $50,000. I mean, but luckily I had it at the time. But it was a lot easier. If you can, guys, can I just make a suggestion? If you're going through a divorce or whatever, if you can pay her off and you have the means and money to do it, do it. You don't want to go to court. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's going to cost you stress, negative energy. Just give her. That's what I did. I just paid her the money, and I was be gone with it. And my divorce. Actually, I paid her. I got officially divorced December of 2002, but I paid her April of that year. So we had already, before I was even divorced, I gave her the money. So if you can work it out like that, that's the best way of doing it.
It's always better to settle cases that
you say that all the time,
whether it's a family court matter or otherwise, because you do not know what it's going to be in the courtroom, and some judges are a little on the lunatic side. They are either very, very pro one side versus pro the other side, and there's a lot of forum shopping. It's called forum shopping. You're looking for the judge that's going to most adequately fit your particular needs, and the lawyers all know each other. They all use the same accountants. There's a cottage industry of lawyers. Actually, it's accountants that just do valuations. And depending on how far in advance of this divorce you're going to think about it,
pay her off.
People plan things accordingly.
Or pay him off, whoever it is.
Well, look, Jeff Bezos' wife is getting billions of dollars. Billions.
Billions.
I mean, with a B. That's got to be one of the most expensive divorces in history.
Well, he's a dope. He cheated on her, right?
Just think what it cost him for it.
That must have been something special. You know, it's cost him a lot of dough, man. But he has the money. Isn't he the richest guy in the world? I don't feel bad for him.
He's the richest guy in the world.
Who
He's
cares?
Exactly right.
So I don't care. Let her take it all. You know.
But some of these are really nasty. Some of these divorces
they
are really nasty. You just think of what happened with Don Sterling and his wife. They were married for all those years.
Oh, yeah.
And when it was reported that Don was losing it, whatever, they jumped all over him.
No.
You know, they forced him to sell the Clippers. And
He was a dope, though. Well, look what he said. He was talking nonsense about black people and Magic Johnson, and you know, he was cheating on her too. So.
But all you need to do is make one slip.
One slip of the tongue.
And it cost you a lot of dough, as it cost him, I'm sure. But anyway, we'll talk more about that right after the break.
All right, it's For the People with Judge Herb Dodell. Get his book From the Trench to the Bench, available on Amazon.com. .com.
1050 AM, KCAA.
Herb Dodell is a lawyer and a judge for the people. Having served as a Superior Court judge, presiding over more than 9,000 cases, he has witnessed firsthand how complicated and corrupt the legal system can be. His goal is to show how things really work in the legal system so that people can navigate the legal system in the best way for them. Many people often feel marginalized by the legal system and are uninformed about how to proceed when unfortunate circumstances arise in their life. Judge Herb will pull back the curtain, lift the veil, so people can truly understand their rights, have access to top legal personnel that they can trust, and have knowledge about how things work so they can make better choices. Judge Herb isn't just knowledgeable. His integrity and spiritual values are truly what make him different. He cares about democratizing access and information for all and desires to turn on the light so the people, you, can benefit. For more information, email the judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. That's askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
Okay, since we mentioned the book, I should mention that this coming Thursday, the revised edition of the book is coming out on Amazon. I made some interesting changes. I added some material on settlements and on gun control and on techniques of how to settle a case.
Cool.
I added a whole bunch of stuff that I thought was going to be very interesting to the public, and I took out, just some stuff that I may have repeated.
Yeah.
And so Thursday, according to Amazon, I spoke to them last week, according to them, Thursday it'll be up, and it's got a new picture on the back cover. Really, we changed the picture. My wife said I looked yellow in the old one.
You look yellow?
Yeah, no comment. And I didn't even touch it up.
Really?
No, there's a great story about that. This friend of mine, Seven Aurelius, this musician friend of mine, wanted to do a picture for the book, for the back of the book. He had designed the front cover, he and another guy. And he's a Grammy Award-winning songwriter. In fact, his album's coming out, Kanye West. He produced that with Kanye West. And his song, which he wrote in our house, by the way, thinks it's going to become the Grammy Award winner next year. It's called Brothers. Anyway, he said, I want to take a picture. So I said, well, okay, but I don't have any, I wasn't wearing a suit or a jacket or anything. He says, meet me at the Beverly Hills Hotel. So I go there, and the guy that runs the men's shop at the Beverly Hills Hotel is an old client of mine. His name is Amir. Fabulous clothes. I mean, beautiful, beautiful stuff. So we go in there, and Amir was there. So he lent me a jacket and a tie and a shirt and a pocket silk, which Roger would have loved. And so we took that picture outside in the garden, but it was a little yellow, So we've changed the picture, and we've added a couple of endorsements.
Where'd you take this picture at, the new one?
The new one, I actually took it in court, in the Superior Court in Chatsworth. I don't know why I did it, but one day I said to the to the clerk. I said, you know what? Why don't you take a picture? I go to show to the family. So she came out, and took the picture of me on the bench, with the robe on and the flags and the whole deal.
Is that on your website?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the same picture. And so I ended up putting some endorsements on the back of this book.
No, you did?
Yeah, one endorsement is from the retired Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Tennessee, Janice Holder.
Very cool.
And I have another one on there from another Superior Court judge here in L.A., my buddy Jim Cato. And the last one is from a guy who was a psychiatrist who loved the book. He liked the spiritual aspects of it. So I've added some nice touches to it.
Right on.
I think.
That's great.
Let's get back to family law.
Do we have to? I'm kidding.
Well, we've done so many different shows on so many different subjects. We've had collection, we've had fires, we've had accountants, we've had tax people, we've had Lee Baca, and we've had all kinds of people on here.
But you're talking family court and domestic violence.
Yeah, well, they belong in that court.
Okay.
Domestic violence cases belong in family court.
Really?
If it qualifies. And I'm sure that Julie will tell you what qualifies.
Well, isn't family court, it's not a criminal court, is it?
No, but if you violate the order, it becomes that.
Right. Well, I'm saying if you have a domestic violence case against you, how could it be in family court?
That's the civil part of it.
Oh, okay.
If there's real violence, it's a crime as well as being a civil tort. And so they prosecute those as just a crime of violence.
So if you have a domestic violence case against you in criminal court, it could affect your family court, I guess, for sure, right?
Just like any case involved in the restraining order courts, the same thing.
Okay.
In fact, I think I told the story before. I had a guy come in, and he had been accused of molesting a 12-year-old for a couple of years, as a matter of fact.
Name wasn't Michael Jackson, was it?
No, it wasn't.
That's terrible.
I don't remember the guy's name, but he was there in court with his lawyer, and there had been a TRO that had been issued by another judge, and I was hearing the case to determine whether or not there should be a permanent restraining order, and he's ready to testify, and I said to him, let me give you some advisement. I'm sure your lawyer knows this. Is there a criminal case pending? He said, yes, there is. The lawyer is now answering, because if the client answers, it could be considered a waiver. So I asked the lawyer, I said, is there a criminal case pending? He says, yep, there sure is. Rape, statutory rape, and whatever. I said, if he testifies in this case, he will be waiving his Fifth Amendment right to testify. And I can tell you for sure that a copy of this transcript is going to be ending up in the hands of the deputy DA who's prosecuting it. And whatever he says is going to be used against him. It's not a good idea in many cases, and I'm not telling the lawyer what to do.
You're letting him know what's good.
I'm telling him what he's looking at down the road if he testifies. Right. He wanted to testify, and he did.
He did?
He did. I issued the restraining order anyway because the evidence was basically overwhelming.
Why would he want to testify if he knew that?
No idea.
If he knew the evidence was overwhelming?
I have no idea. And he was sitting with a lawyer. I said to myself, this lawyer is an idiot.
Right.
Letting this guy testify and creating a transcript that's going to be used in a criminal prosecution against him, not on the chart.
Yeah.
Not on the chart. But he was determined to do that, and there was nothing to support his claims.
And you gave him an out.
I didn't give him an out.
Well, I mean, you told him, hey, man, if you testify, something bad criminally could happen to you. I mean, that's what you're saying.
Basically, I was telling him exactly that.
Yeah, you're telling him that.
If you do this, you're running a big risk that it's going to come back and bite you.
And he got the restraining order against him, I'm sure. Did you ever find out, did it bite him? Do you know what happened to him after that or no?
No, but that was a pretty clear case.
Okay, I'm just saying.
He was taking this girl to a motel. She was 12 years old.
12 years old. And doing what? And molesting her?
He was doing porn and stuff. Yeah, he was doing it all.
What's wrong with people, man?
He was continuing to do it. He did it. Was doing it for it was almost 3 years. Wow. She was, I think, 15 when she was in court, of course, with her parents and her siblings.
How are her parents? This is what I don't understand about these sexually abused cases of minors. Like, how do the parents not know what's going down? Especially, I can see maybe a one-time thing or maybe even 2 times, but if it goes on and on and on, how did the parents not know this stuff?
It happens more frequently than you can imagine.
No, I know.
They don't say anything. I had one, again, in restraining order court, where this guy was coming over to this girl's house. The girl had a very close friend who she would go there to visit for dinner and things like that. And he would take her into the side room, and he was molesting her. And they were all there. The guy that was molesting her was the husband, of the parents that were entertaining this girl. And I'm trying to remember if he testified or not.
It's crazy.
I think he testified too.
It's just so. First of all, it's disgusting and sickening. Second off, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, if I don't know. I'm not a parent. I can't really say. If my kid was going over a grown person's house over and over and over again, even if it was a friend of hers, I'd be meeting the parents. I'd be checking them out. I'd get a vibe on them. There'd be a lot of steps I would take. You know what I mean?
You'd be surprised how negligent people are,
yeah,
or not caring people are.
That's what I think. It's not caring more.
It kind of leads into the next subject, which is custody battles.
Yeah,
those are really nasty.
Yeah,
I had one when I was practicing in early years, where the wife had custody of the child. And the husband, the ex-husband, didn't really care. He was a pornographer, as I remember. And he was never really interested in visitation or whatever it was. And the guy, the wife's new husband, got a great job in Australia, a great job. And big improvement, a good financial return. It would have been great for the kid. You know what happened? The father objected because he said he would lose his visitation rights because the kid was going to be in Australia, and he wasn't satisfied with going once a year or twice a year, whatever it was, and he fought the ability of this guy to get a job. He was so angry at the guy, and he succeeded.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with visiting the child. It had to do with the ex-wife and the new boyfriend or new husband.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Of course.
And it happens all the time. All the time.
Yeah, it's not about the kids. It's about the jealousy or the hatred towards the other spouse.
Oh, and they get real nasty.
I know they do.
They get real nasty. The judges that have those kind of cases, I don't know why anybody would want to sit on those kind of cases. There's nothing to win. And I would venture to say that the father probably didn't use the visitation rights very often. Probably once he got the order preventing the other guy from going to Australia,
didn't care.
He probably didn't care.
Yeah.
But then again, you have to follow the law. And judges that listen to these kinds of cases, it's the same thing with income. They know that people are hiding income.
Well, this one case, like you're saying, and it happens a multitude of times, is that can't the judge see in the past year or 2 years or, a pattern of how many times somebody, like this guy, for instance, visits the kid? If he visits?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, right. And why wouldn't you take that into account?
Well, you do, but you do it in the form of a modification. You can also modify a child support, child custody case. Sometimes they share custody. Sometimes they get along. The smartest thing for people to do is to make a deal. You get them every other weekend. You get them in the summertime for the holiday vacation. You get them here and there, and you work it out.
Yeah.
That's the sensible thing to do. But sometimes they don't get along so much that they'll do it just to spite the other party.
I know.
And what happens, you end up sometimes in visitation that's supervised.
Yeah.
You can't visit the child without having somebody in the room with them.
It's just so bad for the kid too, because they grow up with that stigma.
They also, judges do interview the kids.
Yeah.
I never had it happen. I'd actually never sat in family court, even though they were planning to have me do these domestic violence cases there. It never happened. I ended up staying in restraining order cases, and I never did get to the family court, which didn't bother me too much. It was the same thing. They sent me to mediation school. I took a course at Pepperdine University to be a mediator. They trained us to be mediators. Never happened. Never happened.
Well.
It's been a whole week, 6 days, full time, taking this course. They were gonna make me a settlement judge. That was the plan.
Oh yeah.
But that never happened.
Well, listen, you didn't make out too bad.
The system is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, of course not. It never is.
But when you get down to the support issues in family court, they got the chart, as I just mentioned.
Right.
You earn X dollars, you're going to pay half of X or whatever. The key date for everybody who's listening to the show is 10 years.
10 years.
10 years. If you're married 10 years, lifetime support.
Oh, how great is
lifetime support. I know a guy said, look, I got another couple weeks to go. I said, get out now. You got it before the 10 years.
Go to Zimbabwe. All right, we got to take a break, Judge.
Okay, we'll have Julie, hopefully.
I think she's on the phone right now, actually.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
NBC Talk Radio, 1050 AM, KCAA.
In his book, From the Trench to the Bench, Judge Herb Dodell demystifies the legal system, including both civil and criminal, the lawyers, the judges, and the process. As a judge, former deputy district attorney, and criminal defense attorney, he knows the legal system. He has the inside information that you need to pick a lawyer, and he's here to give it to you. No matter what you're facing that makes you think you may need a lawyer, Judge Herb will shed valuable light on your situation and reveal your best options and many secrets of how the judicial system actually works. To find out more about how the legal system really works, you can get your copy of Judge Herb Dodell's eye-opening book, From the Trench to the Bench, at Amazon.com.
Okay, we're back. And we're very fortunate today because we have a guest who's a real specialist in an area that a lot of people shy away from. But she's really very, very good at it. Her name is Julie Stemkowski, and she practices in both LA County and Ventura County. And she told me when I spoke to her yesterday that there's a difference. So we'll ask her what the difference is between counties. But we're going to start off, because we started off the show today, by talking about domestic violence. And I actually showed what we have. I don't know if you've read it or not, or they even have a copy of it, but we have a judge's guide to domestic violence cases. See, I'm holding it up over here.
Great job.
So we have to read all this stuff and understand it. And you were telling me that in order to get certified in certain aspects, you have to know all of this, all these cases and all these code sections. So you were really pretty experienced. So tell us a little bit about you, what you do, where you've been doing it, and how long you've been doing it.
Hi, Your Honor. Thank you. Yes, I do family law. I do divorce, child custody, domestic violence, and other issues in family law. I am in Westlake Village is where my office is. I practice in LA and Ventura counties, as you said. I've been practicing for 25 years. And I really focus on child custody and domestic violence because, to me, those are the two most important areas in family law. Divorce, obviously people care about money, but when it comes to child custody and when it comes to domestic violence, it ups the bar a little bit.
Well, what we can do to make it more easily understood by the public, let's do like a hypothetical. You get a phone call from a wife saying that the husband is there right now and he's beating her up. And she's petrified. What can she do?
Well, first I would tell her to call 911 if it was happening right then and there. And then the police would decide regarding criminal domestic violence restraining order. But if her husband is beating her up and she needs to get a domestic violence restraining order, she needs one on an emergency basis, which she can get within a day. And she would hopefully call a lawyer because that's a very serious situation. there are two ways to go about it. You can either give the other side notice that you're going to go into court the very next day to get an order, or if you're in imminent fear for your safety, you can go to court without even telling the other side. And what you do is fill out a bunch of forms. There's a bunch of DV forms, and you write down with your lawyer or by yourself if you don't have a lawyer, you write down what has happened to you, the most recent date of an incident of physical or emotional violence, abuse. Abuse is very broadly defined. It runs the gamut from physical altercations, physical abuse, to simply disturbing somebody's peace. But you want to write down clearly and precisely on a declaration for the court what has happened and why you're in fear. And you can get into court the next day, and the judge will rule on your request for a temporary restraining order that day.
That's a temporary restraining order. Are there such things called EPOs that the officer can get a restraining order, temporary restraining order of a kind in the field?
Yes. And that can happen. That is that you still want to go into court, in family court, and protect yourself. So you go into family. So if you're married or divorced or living together or in a domestic partnership, you can go into court and get your domestic violence temporary restraining order if the judge believes you. So here we're assuming that it is a true situation. It's scary. And it's going to be based on credibility. And if the judge thinks it's more likely than not that you're telling the truth. And when we talk about temporary restraining orders, they're temporary. They last for up to 21 days. So the judge will make rulings if the judge believes you, saying this person needs to stay X amount of feet, 100 feet, let's say, away from you. This person can't go near your house, your car. The court will often ask whether you know or believe that the other person owns or possesses firearms. And the person will have to, the perpetrator of domestic violence or alleged perpetrator will have to relinquish his or her firearms. But that person is entitled to a full-blown evidentiary hearing within 21 days of the issuance of the temporary restraining order. So,
by the way, that's the same in the general restraining order, is not in family court as well. It's 21 days.
That's correct.
I have a question. I have a question. How about the woman's attacking the man?
Same exact thing.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Okay.
You know,
Same exact
I'm all for the Me Too movement, but I'm just doing the other side of the fence, because we always talk about how men get beat up. I mean, men beat up women. We never talk about women beating up men, though they can do that.
It doesn't have to be beating up. It's emotional too.
Or really?
Sure.
Like words?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
Yes. She could be browbeating him and yelling and screaming at him and everything else, and if it's affecting him to the quality as defined by the statute,
really,
then it's possible for him to get a restraining order against her as well.
Oh, okay.
I don't think you see that much of it, but I suppose it can happen, can it, Julie?
It does. It can and it does happen, but I'll tell you one thing that's really scary is that there are a lot of false allegations of domestic violence.
I bet.
And if you are a man, which it typically happens in my practice anyway to men, where mom or wife accuses husband of some sort of domestic violence or abuse simply to gain a litigation advantage in a custody dispute. Because, oh gosh, if dad gets a restraining order against him, there is a presumption that it is not in the children's best interest to have, for dad, to have joint custody of these kids. And so that gets into a really serious area. If you are a person who is being falsely accused of domestic violence, no doubt about it, you have to get a lawyer. It's a quasi-criminal situation.
How do you fight that? I mean, how do you fight a false accusation?
Let me tell you, it's really hard because you have to prove a negative, right?
Yeah.
So, because if somebody accuses you of something you didn't do, how do you prove that you didn't do it? Well, you go back and you are as detailed as you can be as to what really happened in those circumstances and on those days. I'll tell you a recent case, excuse me, that I had where mom accused dad the day after we filed for dissolution of marriage and custody of the kids. Mom accused dad of domestic violence, and she said, you know what? We were in the Coffee Bean in Malibu, and he did this, and he got up in my face, and he was, punching me, and this, that, and the other thing. Okay, so you know what I did?
You went to the Coffee Bean and interviewed some of the witnesses.
I pulled their surveillance tape.
There you go.
Okay? They have cameras. And I pulled their surveillance tape, and guess what? I went to court, and I said, Your Honor, I have for the court exactly what happened at the Coffee Bean. And guess what? Nothing happened. The court's going to see nothing on that tape because nothing happened. And Mom, in all her specificity, who said, he jumped up from the table, and then he put his right arm in my face, and he did that. It didn't happen.
Wow.
So I was lucky. I was lucky in that case. But you have to be
weren't
really
lucky.
careful.
You were prepared. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to think of everything you can possibly think of to help your client. And another thing is that these, like I said, when it gets into criminal allegations, like I've had clients that were accused, and again, they were men, but I've had clients that were accused of sexual molestation, of very serious criminal acts. So guess what? I told my client, you got to get a criminal defense attorney in addition to me. You got to be really careful what you say in civil court or family court when you may have criminal actions pending against you.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Julie, because before you came on the show today, we were talking about some cases that I had in restraining order court where they wanted to testify, and it was a criminal case pending, and I warned the lawyers, if he talks in this courtroom, he's going to be waiving his Fifth Amendment rights. So that's something that apparently is universal. That's the best advice you can give them is shut up.
Best advice. Do not say a word. You cannot let them say anything in civil court if it may implicate them in criminal court, and that means you're right, Your Honor, taking the Fifth.
So we know that happens out there all the time, every day. What about the burdens of proof? Now, we know in the civil restraining order cases, the burden of proof to get a restraining order is by clear and convincing evidence, which is obviously a much higher standard than preponderance of the evidence. But in the family court, it's different. How is it different?
Well, actually, in the family court, it is preponderance of the evidence. More likely than not that you're telling the truth. And so here's what it is. It's simple. Does the judge believe you, or doesn't the judge believe you? It's a very, very low standard. Why? Why is it so much lower than it is in civil court, than in a civil harassment case? Because you're typically living with these people. You have a familial relationship. And so the court wants to be extra cautious about protecting you from violence or abuse. So the burden of proof is low. Whereas in civil court, you're usually in there for, let's say, a dispute with your next door neighbor or somebody at work that's harassing you. Your relationship with that person, you're not as close with that person. So you have a higher burden of proof to show that they're really, really, they're doing something bad enough to get a restraining order issued against them. So yes, in civil harassment cases, the standard of proof is a lot higher, clear and convincing evidence, than it is in family court domestic violence.
Also, in restraining order court, we generally issue orders for 3 years. That's the general rule. We can be much shorter, but not more. Is the time difference in family court different?
In family court, judges can issue a restraining order for up to 5 years.
So it's 2 years more.
Yes, up to 5 years. And after, at the end of 5 years, you can go back to court and ask the judge to reissue the restraining order. And, by the way, there doesn't have to be any new domestic violence that occurred during those 5 years. You can just tell the court that you remain afraid of the perpetrator. And, again, the court will reissue the restraining order if the court believes you. Another thing, Your Honor, that your listeners may be interested in and should know, not to necessarily expect, but people have heard of prevailing party attorney's fees. Like, you know, you go to court, Your Honor, you're going to win because this person is committing abuse or domestic violence against you, and if you win, you're entitled to prevailing party attorney's fees. Well, you may be, but that's the key word, may. It's discretionary, and if the court finds that the other party doesn't have the ability to pay your fees, you're not going to get them.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I thought they could issue an order and it becomes a judgment. That's what it is like in restraining order court. Once we issue an order awarding attorney's fees, it becomes the equivalent of a judgment that can be collected just as any other judgment.
But, Judge, I can't pay.
Doesn't matter. Judgment is a judgment.
Thanks.
It's the same as any civil judgment.
Okay.
If you can't collect on it, you can't collect on it. But
the judge in family court has the discretion not to order the fees if the court doesn't feel that the other party has the ability to pay the fees. So if they're showing that they make no money on their income and expense declaration and they owe $15,000 in credit card debt, the judge is going to say they can't pay.
Well, that's different than in restraining order court. It's basically mandatory. The prevailing party is entitled as a matter of law to attorney's fees. The judge can pick how much it is, and I used to sit there and look at the attorney's fees bills to determine what was reasonable, but it was not discretionary. It was discretionary to the amount, but not to get them.
This is why you need a family law attorney, because in family court it is Family Code Section 6344, and it says the court may order fees, but it has to be consistent with the income, the needs of the parties, and the respective abilities to pay.
Well, that's a big difference.
Yeah, it's very different.
How about restitution? I read in this Judge's Guide to Domestic Violence Cases that I had to read that the judge can order restitution, damages to the party that has been abused. Have you ever had that happen for you? I
have never had that happen.
But it's in the code. I was surprised myself when I saw that. I said, really? That means you can recover damages that you may have sustained, including loss of earnings and loss of wages as a result of the conduct of the other party. That jumped out at me.
I learned something.
Did you say you learned something new today?
I learned something from you, Your Honor. I always learn something from you. But another thing, something that's really important in this area, Your Honor, is that everyone should know that if you are being accused of domestic violence, if the court finds that you have committed any sort of abuse toward your spouse, your ex-spouse, whatever it is in family court, there is a presumption, like I said earlier, that it is not in the best interest of your kids for you to have joint custody, but there is also a presumption that you should not receive spousal support. So all of these things are big deals. They're big deals. And finally, everyone should know, your listeners should know, that the reason that a lot of people get attorneys in domestic violence situations is because it is a quasi-criminal situation. It is a quasi-criminal proceeding, meaning if a restraining order is issued against you, it goes into a criminal database, like a criminal system. We call it the CLET system.
Right.
You going to tell us what that stands for, Your Honor?
Yeah, we have the same thing in restraining order court. It's the California
Law Enforcement Telecommunications
right.
System.
I never could get that quite right. Through the CARPAS system, CARPAS.
But it's serious because
it's very serious.
The restraining order. Yeah, if you violate the restraining order, you can be charged with a crime under the penal code.
Makes them not want to get married.
Yes, don't get married.
That's it.
I tell my clients, don't get married again. Don't have any more babies.
Well, it's a very complicated. I was telling Gary before that there are times when, in terms of custody, more in terms of visitation, that sometimes it has to be a supervised visitation. Have you had those situations?
All the time. I have many, many, many situations like that. So,
how does that work?
So if you have children and you get a domestic violence restraining order against your spouse or ex-spouse, there's carve-outs, exceptions in that restraining order for child visitation. And if, let's take the example you used, dad is beating up mom. If dad has like an anger management problem, the judge may say, I think you need to go to a batterers intervention program. And maybe you need to take a parenting class. And you know what, if you have a substance abuse issue, maybe you need to do some sort of outpatient treatment for that. So you know what, until you do those things, I don't think it's safe for you to be around the kids unsupervised. So I'm going to say, Dad, you can see the kids once a week for 3 hours with supervision. Supervision. You've got professional monitors and non-professional monitors. The parties can agree on maybe a grandparent or a friend who's willing to supervise the visitation with the children. They can't find somebody like that. There's professional monitors. However, they're kind of expensive, like $75 an hour. But it means that dad, in our situation, our hypothetical, can't be alone with the kids right now. I mean, he has anger management problems, he's got substance abuse problems, and we got to protect these kids.
Didn't Brad Pitt have to have one of these? Didn't Brad Pitt have a supervised visitation for a while?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Gary.
Brad Pitt, I think he had a supervised visitation when he was going through his divorce with Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, probably.
I
wrote an article on that divorce.
Oh.
You did? Where can we find it?
I have to read that.
Yeah. Well, when it first came, when they were first getting divorced, she made it sound like he was just a crazy monster. And at the time I wrote an article, I didn't know whether he was or he wasn't, but the media was reporting that, he was not going to be able to see his children at all.
Yeah.
And so I thought, gosh, so I wrote, she's got to show that he's a really, really, really bad dude to not see his kids at all. So I don't know if that happened, but I do think it was supervised, and supervised visitation is actually a great option because kids get to maintain their relationship with dad in our hypothetical, and mom, and the feels that the child or children are still safe. And once they finish anger management, or once they finish, an outpatient substance abuse program, let's say, they can step up maybe to unsupervised visitation. The court always wants what's in the children's best interest, and what the court starts out at is frequent and continuing contact with both parents.
That's the foundation. That's the way it usually starts.
Right. So I always tell my clients, basically we start at 50-50 custody, right? Like we want frequent and continuing contact, those are the magic words, with both parents. And if you're going to deviate from the 50-50 custody, you got to show the court why, right? So sometimes a scorned woman, let's say, will come into my office and she'll say, all right, I want full custody, and I don't want my husband to see the kids at all. And I'll say, well, is he a good dad? Yeah, he's a good dad, but I hate him. He cheated on me. He's an ass. And so I don't want to see it, And, then I'll say, well, do your kids love him? Yes. Okay, so your kids love him and he's a good dad, and you want to punish them both because he cheated on you. I mean, I get the emotion, but it's not fair to the children and it's not fair to the dad.
And you put the kids,
So
you know what you do? Can I just make a comment? Because my parents were divorced.
Yeah.
You put the kids in the middle of it all, when you do stuff like that. When a spouse has such animosity towards the other spouse and uses the kids as leverage, it's a lifelong thing for these kids. And they don't even realize it.
It's awful. It's absolutely awful. And that is why I tell my people that come into my office, like how I just described, whether it's mom or dad, I tell them exactly what you just said. It scars them for life, that they have to rise above their hatred for each other to really protect their children. Because, I mean, look, it's a traumatizing situation for your parents to get divorced in the first place. If parents don't try to rise above it and focus on you, at the children, and make the transition as easy as possible, they're doing their children a huge disservice. But I have to say, even really good people and even really good parents, it's really hard for them to see past their anger sometimes. So I think that's the job of a divorce attorney. I think a family law attorney, I think you're obligated to try to help your client get to that stage because you want to be an advocate for the children. You want to help the children.
What's the name of that chart that you guys use to determine the amount of spousal support? It's
called Screw the Husband.
No,
there's
a name for it. Do you know what the name of it? What's the chart?
I do know the name. I do know the name of it. It's actually software, and it's called the Dissomaster.
That's right,
software.
The Dissomaster. That's the one.
No, it isn't.
No, it's called a Dissomaster. They look on the chart to see how much you make and how much you're going to pay.
And the husband goes, I want to diss her. Hello, did you get that joke?
Yes, we did.
But the bottom line is that they use that Dissomaster to determine the amount of money, don't they?
Yes. So Dissomaster is a software program, and it's basically we stick numbers, and the courts use it too. We stick numbers in the Dissomaster based on mom's income, dad's income, and the percentage of time that the children spend with each parent. And then the Dissomaster spits us out numbers for support, child support and spousal support.
Okay, one more question.
Wow.
You and I once talked about it because I had an issue and I asked you about it. It's called a set-aside order. What is a set-aside order?
A motion to set aside.
Okay, that's pretty graphic.
Well,
what's involved with that?
Okay, well, if you don't like what happened, what the judge ruled, the judge, sometimes has a bad day and doesn't do the right thing, at least in your mind. You have two options. You can, immediately, you can file a motion for reconsideration. So you're saying, Your Honor, I think something wacky happened. Can you kind of look back and see what your ruling was? And you only have 10 days to do that. If you don't do it within the 10 days, you can file a motion to set aside. I think the code is, Your Honor, is it 473?
Yeah, that's the code section dealing with civil, basically setting aside defaults and things of that nature, inexcusable neglect and whatever it is. But
Same.
This is
or fraud.
But there's a form for that. I know that because I have one. That's basically put out by the Judicial Council that you can basically just fill out, send it into the judge. It's to get an order set aside. In fact, I think it's an FAM form.
Well, that's family law, but when I file a reconsideration, I file it as a regular motion, and same thing with motion to set aside. We file it. Well, our motions in family court are called RFOs, or requests for order, and you do a request for order to set aside whatever order the court made that you don't like.
Okay, now we're going to wrap it up. So let us know who you are, spell your name and your phone number and maybe an email address so that if anybody wants to find you,
I'll hire
they
you.
can do that.
If I ever get married again.
You don't want this
Don't
guy
get married. Don't get married.
I'm not.
Okay. Thank you guys
He's
for having me on.
No, he's very entertaining. So tell us who you are.
Okay, I'm Julie Stankowski, Stankowski, family and divorce lawyer in Westlake Village. My website is stankowskilawgroup.com, and I do all kinds of family and divorce cases in both LA and Ventura County.
Okay, and there's a difference, right? We have enough time to tell the difference? What's the one difference?
I'll tell you.
You don't have time. Go ahead. Quickly.
All right, what's the difference?
The major difference is in child custody. Ventura County is a recommending county. What the mediator decides in child custody is golden. It gets recommended to the judge, and the judge rubber stamps it. Typically, that's in Ventura County.
But not in
LA
LA.
County is not. No.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you very much.
We got to go.
I learned a lot. Now that I could be decertified.
I'm certifiable. All right, let's go.
You're definitely certifiable.
Let's go.
Well, thanks very much.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3